Bernard Strauss was not among any of the captives that you found. That is unfortunate. However, my Svit report that 2 shuttles filled with humans have left for the alien ship. Those humans are to be enslaved. That's right. I said slavery. So what? You're a slave here. You do what I say. I was humanity's slave for over 300 years. I'm sending you back to the alien ship to try and rescue Bernard. But while you're there, kill everything you see and gather as much visual information as possible. At least the killing part appeals to you, doesn't it? Hi, everybody.
Howdy.
That was a passage from today's game, Marathon.
Yeah, that's a hell of a intro.
So, this is Stinky Gamer Pleasure Dome. We're covering Marathon. Any sources you want to shout out that you used?
I think you covered most of everything. The only other thing I had that I didn't was, I think I've got it open here. It was the digital archive over at archive.gamehistory.org. I found a copy of the original sales sheet. Other than that, not really. I think your list is pretty.
Back to that when we talk about multiplayer. Beyond that, if you're talking about Marathon, you have to use the Marathon story page, maintained and curated by Hamish Sinclair, and that site is just like a window into an alternate history. And it is a very pre-wiki site, but it's regularly updated. It is a kind of cataloging of everything that happens in the story of the game, and almost like a discussion board for theories and interpretations on the game's story. And that site has been regularly updated since 1995 for about 30 years now. This guy has curated that site, so that is a remarkable resource. I'm throwing in Mandalore Gaming as a source because I don't quote him directly, but I feel like I'm going to quote him accidentally. He has a phenomenal deep dive video on Marathon and the sequels as well.
And that is the game we're covering, Marathon. I guess we kind of glazed over that, but
yeah. Wikipedia and obvious sources related to that, the Bungie wiki, because we can't talk about Marathon without talking about the news.
There is news indeed.
Oh boy. But yeah. So Marathon is released 1994. I want to say, I'm not gonna say a month. I didn't write that down like a dummy. Developed and published by Bungie, who by this point was a pretty established Macintosh developer, and that is originally going to be the system that you play this on, is Mac OS. And I'm talking like pre-Steve Jobs coming back Mac OS, when it was still kind of messy. This is the early 90s, so there is no ESRB rating that I can find. If you are concerned about that, I would treat this game as being rated M or Peggy 16. And sales pitch. If blood is a third margarita with Stuart Gordon, Marathon is forcing William Gibson to make you an absinthe cocktail at gunpoint.
Okay.
So, shall we start with a quote from the manual?
Yeah, if you want to read another quote.
Yeah, I'm in a narration mood here. Let me resize my screen here, because I promise you I'm going to mispronounce a name here. In 490 BC, the Persian king Darius landed 20,000 cavalry, infantry, and archers on the plain of Marathon and established a defensive beachhead where he intended to destroy the Greek forces before conquering Athens. The Greek general Miltiades, leading 10,000 infantry, learned that the Persians were resting and watering their horses while awaiting the Greek attack. Miltiades decided to forego the standard slow phalanx formation and charged his troops at a dead run across the plain. Before the Persians could react, the Greeks were inside their archers' range. The Athenian infantry had superior armor and melee weapons, and the lightly armed Persians, without archery or cavalry support, were butchered. A Greek soldier, Phidippides, ran 26.2 miles from the plain of Marathon to Athens, where he announced the Greek victory before dying. Darius retreated to his ships and sailed directly for Athens. Miltiades, guessing the Persian intent, led the Athenians on an overnight forced march to the city. The next morning, the Persian fleet arrived at Athens to find the Greek army waiting for them. The Persians turned and fled. In all, the Persians lost 6,400 men, while the Greeks 192. Contrary to custom, the Greeks buried their dead on the plain of Marathon to commemorate the victory. Carnage ratio 1 to 33.33. Kills per minute 13.73. Lessons applicable to the game: move fast, seize the initiative, wield superior firepower, dive into the melee, anticipate enemy movements, slaughter the defenseless, endure. This is the last thing they say to you in the game's manual before moving on to like credits and the end user license agreement. So they wanted to hammer home the, I think, crazy namesake of the ship and how it relates to the game. There are a lot of parallels to Greek mythology and Greek history in this game. We're not going to dive too deep into that, but it's there.
I was surprised just how much this game goes into story, especially for games of this era. You expect it to be more like Blood, where other than maybe an intro of some sort, like all of the real story is handled in the manual. Like Doom has a story, and it's all in the manual. And occasionally in between like episodes, you'll get like a paragraph, but there is a lot here.
Yeah, and there are bits of story in the manual that, like, for such a story heavy game, I don't feel like they have a ton of bearing on the story. But it's interesting.
It's more like mood setting.
It's there to establish sort of how the player character got there on the ship. You are Mjolnir Recon Unit number 7. I'll confirm that later. But you're a cyborg, and you are a security officer for the Marathon and the Tau Ceti colony below. So Marathon is a game that takes place in the distant future, I believe 2794, on the planet Tau Ceti 4. The Marathon is a generation ship that has been traveling across the galaxy from Earth for about 3-4 centuries now, before arriving in the Tau Ceti system and establishing a colony there. And that is kind of where we start. There is something going wrong aboard the Marathon, which sits in orbit over the colony, and you, the player, are a security officer sent to investigate it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how, I mean, first of all, it drops you right into the game. Like, you're basically immediately in a combat with, I think, pretty interesting alien designs. They do foreshadow what would come out of Halo later. They're very non-generic, they're not like alien grays and stuff. The main one we get are almost like elf-like. They're like tall and spindly, and the main one you see mostly does melee attacks with the spears, but they come in different colors that have different abilities or different health pools.
Yeah, like the newer attempt at Marathon, Marathon 1 is a surprisingly colorful game. Yeah, no, Marathon is like the modern attempt at recreating it. It's a very colorful game in a way that serves gameplay. You kind of know what to expect after a while, seeing these enemies at a distance, at a glance, because you can see their silhouette and you can see their color. And you know if they're going to hit you with ranged attacks. You know if they are going to be a little bit more nimble than some of their counterparts. Another thing I like about the design is you have these like a consistent element of 3 eyes when you're dealing with the 4, but those aren't the only enemies you fight in this game.
And I do think it's interesting thinking about this as the company that went on to make Halo. You see a lot of that foreshadowed. Like, Halo is very colorful, especially for games of that era. Like, you can see how we got from one to the other. Like, the aliens are all like purple and pinks and like blue, navy blues, and like a lot of their ships are like bright purple. You get into like the alien architecture, and it's also this metallic-y purple. Like, yeah, the outdoor world is greens and blues, and it looks like outside. It's pretty standard. The stuff that does take place on like the marine ships and stuff is got a lot of gray. It's very human, military-esque. But I think this game has a lot of that too. Like, the Marathon itself does feel a lot of it. It's very gray. It's very utilitarian. It just has a lot of like colorful computer displays and like, I guess, signs, we'll call them. There's like symbols painted on some of the walls, like patterns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of like kind of your industrial caution stripes and markings on the wall. Like it's not going to be like your build engine kind of realistic map design. But it is in the earlier parts of the game very, and the later parts that bookend it, very industrial.
Yes.
You do visit the alien ship, and you're describing like Covenant ships, and you see the earliest iterations of that design language Bungie likes to come back to in Marathon there.
And playing it, you also notice some of the symbols they use also show up in Halo. Like there's a lot of, and Destiny. Like there's a lot of just icons. They're like, all right, this is an alien symbol. This is an old language symbol. Like, and it pulls through a lot of their work.
Yeah, there's almost like and we'll come back to this when we talk about the story, but there's almost like a meta narrative going on that, it's almost as if like the player character keeps getting reincarnated throughout the ages.
Yeah. The other aliens are interesting too. My favorite is probably the one I was calling the sex pervert. It's just like a floating cloak, and then it like flashes you, and like this weird spiky beam comes out at you.
Yeah, those are those are the Sphit compilers, which are more sympathetic than sex pests, but they do have an animation where they kind of like open their cloak and shoot you. And given like it's a studio of a dozen or so college-aged guys in the 90s, that's probably done on purpose. Yeah. It's probably funny on purpose, but
it is interesting. In one of the early consoles you interact with, which is where most of the story is, it's hidden in these computer consoles where you can read through files and interact with the main AI that's kind of leading you through your mission. But one of them talks about, I believe it's the Sphit, are basic. They're similar to a human brain, but their body is mostly cyborg with like a little bit of a brain in there, but with about 1,000 times more nerves than a standard human brain. Yeah. And the brains become so reliant, the flesh has become so reliant on the cyborg that they can't exist without it.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of a cyberpunk texture to this game, especially in some of the more alien designs, but also just the very industrial look of everything, and like the uniform of the player character. It almost looks like you have like a helicopter pilot helmet on.
Yeah.
A few chances you glimpse that. I think I got a little bit out of sequence here.
That's fine. I just thought I didn't really see it in there. I thought it'd be a good time to talk about like the actual enemy designs. There's also
yeah.
Early on, you bump into like the weird floating bug things. I like those.
Yeah,
they're bizarre, and I didn't really hear them talked about much. At least as far as I got into the game, they're kind of just around.
When I played the game in the past, I almost thought of them as like, these aren't exactly like a client race of the 4. I think it's more like these are rats that were on their ship that gone onto the Marathon. They're kind of little like gremlin fuckers that are just around and annoying. But it seems like this is just hostile fauna that has gotten onto the Marathon as a consequence of the 4 boarding. But there's that. I liked. Did you get far enough to see the 4 troopers?
Are those the red ones?
The 4 troopers. So there's 4 fighters, 4 troopers, 4 enforcers, and 4 hunters. And the 4, by the way, PFHOR, I believe.
I'm looking at it now. Yes, PF.
Are the aforementioned race of alien slavers. This is going to be the main antagonist of the game. Aside from the inevitability of the closure of the universe, which is, like, I'm not joking, that's going to be what you're fighting the most. That is going to be the impetus of the game. The 4 troopers are deployed after you start fighting back, and they're almost like deployed as a response to you, the character, because they have a weapon that is like an alien version of the assault rifle you have. It fires in bursts. It sounds like an assault rifle, and they fire a grenade-like projectile. It's almost like they were deployed in response to you. It almost feels reactive, even though that's smoke and mirrors. The hunters are just heavily armored tanks. They're just like kind of mech suits almost for the 4. And the enforcers you find later, I don't think either of us got to that point.
No, did not. I'm looking at them right now. I didn't see them.
Yeah, the enforcers are on the ship. Like, there's a section of the game where you go onto the 4 ship. The 4 enforcers, they shoot at other 4. They're almost like the 4's military police, and they usually leave you alone unless you are already, like, there's a reason you've aggroed them or you provoke them. And they all have like an alien rifle that you can pick up and add to your inventory. So they're pretty cool. There's like a risk reward for attacking them. Like you can leave them alone if it's not an objective sometimes, but you get a cool new weapon by killing them and engaging them.
There's also, we didn't get to them, but there's also hunters, and it's interesting how similar they are to the hunters from Halo.
Yeah, no, that's the armored mech types I was talking about.
Yeah.
They don't look like mechs. They look more like just beefy 4.
Yeah.
And they do have that kind of like smooth, like carapace, like I want to say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they're very bug-like, but they have like the big, like almost like arm shields like the hunter in Halo.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have like the spiky, almost like dreadlocks coming out of their head on the bigger ones. So there's a smaller one and a bigger one. It looks like the bigger ones. No, it looks like they all do. They're just smaller on some.
Juggernauts? I forgot about the Juggernauts.
So they actually changed the sprite in 2 and 3 to have more of the spiky head. It looks like the first one they're a little more bug-like.
Yeah, while we're talking about the enemies, I think, like, just an aside, the art style is almost like very comic book, where a lot of what you see in games at the time, if they weren't pixel art, they were like photo sourced or like clay models or taken from real photos. Like, Duke Nukem's a good example, I think, of like a lot of the pig cops are clay models. You have your shotgun, which is just like a first person photograph of like a riot shotgun that George Broussard bought at a police auction that he's just like racking each frame of.
Yeah.
Here, this is actual hand-drawn art. It's got a very comic book 90s, like, kind of, I don't know, Rob Liefeld style without all the muscles.
Yeah, it's definitely of the late 80s, early 90s sci-fi kind of look. Speaking to that Duke, though, I did forget to mention last episode that all the enemies in that were clay models as well.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the standard, surprisingly, at the time.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it just worked for Doom, and everyone saw Doom as a pattern for success. Because before Doom, even id was doing pixel art for their enemies. And I think they just saw clay as an easy way of doing some interesting designs. I think they had, I mentioned this later, a lot of people working on these small teams did double duty. And I think a lot of these people that were doing other tasks were artists on their own time. And I think that's also what drew them to clay. But you don't see any clay models here. If we cover Marathon 2 and Infinity, we'll talk about how the art style changes there. But they abandon some of the hand-drawn stuff in favor of 3D models that have been scanned in and edited.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Also, this is not their first FPS. They also did Pathways into Darkness, which was also very hand-drawn. So they were they were already, I think, just comfortable with that style of design. So
yeah,
Pathways into Darkness is an interesting one. We could talk about it. It's very like, I'd put it closer to Blood. You're basically like a soldier going into an Aztec ruin to stop an ancient awakening god.
Yeah, an alien contacts Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton sends a special forces team to the Yucatan Peninsula to kill a god.
Yes.
it's wild. I would put that more on the like a dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
But it was a game that was very much made because Wolfenstein 3D was getting kind of popular and the Mac needed something like that. But it's as much Wolfenstein 3D as it is like, I don't know, Ultima, what's the...
Ultima Underworld?
I think so.
I know, well, before that, even in 92, they did Minotaur Labyrinth of Crete, which is an actual dungeon crawler. Then they did Pathways.
One's top down.
Then they did Marathon. So Pathways is kind of like the in-between between a dungeon crawler and what Marathon becomes.
I can't believe you forgot Nop.
Well, Nop was technically pre-Bungie. Their Pong ripoff.
Yeah.
That was written by Alex by himself, given away as freeware. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. And then Bungie was formed in 91 to release Operation Desert Storm, which he had written.
Their tank game, as like, I think as the Gulf War was like still going on or finishing up.
Yeah, it was based on the events of the ongoing Gulf War.
Yeah.
Oh boy. The game features 20 levels culminating in a mission set in Baghdad, Iraq, with the final enemy being Saddam Hussein.
I think we need to do an episode where we cover like everything in between everything in between the two Iraq wars, because there's so many games where like there's like something where it's like, all right, we're going back to Iraq to finish what we started. We're going to kick Saddam's ass. And it's like, oh boy, that doesn't age well.
Yeah, Gulf War video games would be interesting, but that's such a long period. It would be more just like an overview. Like we'd pick one to play and then talk about the others as like kind of set dressing, I guess.
Soldier of Fortune.
That would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
But back to Marathon.
Yeah. So, do we have any enemies left we want to talk about?
I think those are the main ones I got to in my playthrough. There are certainly a couple others, but you're not going to see them, so maybe we can leave those as a surprise for people who keep going. It's not a long game either. Like, you were looking at it, I think we made it like a third to halfway with our 1 to 2 within 1 to 2 hours. It depends how long you stop and read.
Yes.
If you are reading everything, I think it'll about double the time of the game.
Yeah.
And if you're doing what I did, because getting into level design a little bit, they are like very labyrinthian. They can be easy to get lost in, and there's some weird puzzles.
There's some weird puzzles.
So I was just using my phone to take pictures the whole time. I posted pictures in the chat for a reason, so I could take it with I was taking pictures on my phone, posting them on the chat, and then referencing them on my second monitor while I was playing.
You'll get into some levels where and you have an auto map. But you'll go to like the first terminal in a level. G4 Sunbathing, probably one of the standout levels of the game. And I think kind of within what we both got is that outer, like you're in the vacuum of space kind of level and you're trying to align a satellite dish. Is a good example of that, where it's just like you start the terminal. And the terminal message is something along the lines of like, you need to activate these switches here, 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 and here. You better memorize this, asshole, because this terminal's hard to get to. It'll say like just short of that.
Yeah.
It's if you're good at navigating mazes, you will do fine with Marathon, aside from a hitch at Colony Ship for Sale Cheap, which we might talk about later. But that is the stopping point for a lot of people playing Marathon for their first time or playing it again.
Yeah.
When I tried to play it again before this podcast, that is where my progress ground to a halt. I've beaten that level before, but holy hell, it is a slog. It is cruel on purpose, and I think we'll come back to that.
Yeah, so I did not make it that far on this playthrough, but it is... I would say I was honestly surprised for when this came out. And we're talking about having games like Doom coming out. Blood wasn't out. Was this the same year as Duke around?
Duke was 96. This was 94.
Okay, so this is pre like any build engine game. So
this
is peak Doom clone era. People saw Doom and were like, everyone was trying to be like, I can make Doom too.
Yeah, nobody was calling these games first-person shooters. They were strictly Doom clones. What you have to compete with in the year 1994 is Doom 2, Rise of the Triad, Blake Stone, Heretic, Operation Body Count from our friends at Capstone, and like Super 3D Noah's Ark.
Yeah, it's a weird... I think all of those are on Steam now. I like Rise of the Triad, but it is bizarre. Rise of the Triad is interesting in its own way. It's like one of the first ones with like jumping and like power-ups that like timed power-ups, and that game is unique. It does just as much interesting for the genre as I would say this does.
It's funny you bring that up in connection to Marathon, because they are both tied for dual wielding. They both, like, the same day Marathon comes out, like the shareware episode for Rise of the Triad comes out. Or I've got that backwards, but they, like, both of these studios independently come up with the idea of dual wielding on the same day.
I did see that Wikipedia at least did credit Marathon with being the first game to have alternative fires for guns, and the first game to have what's the word, objective based missions instead of just kill everything, get to a point and push a button, maybe find a key in between.
Yeah, and you can stretch the definition of first game to do that because like System Shock comes out this year, but I would put that more of like an RPG that happens to have guns than a first person shooter.
It's wild that so Doom 2, this, Rise of the Triad, and System Shock were all the same year.
A crazy year.
Like, all going in very different directions. If you want to call Doom like the origin point, they're kind of all pushing in a very unique place.
But yeah, you get several missions where you teleport into an area and then whichever AI companion you have is telling you, okay, I need you to explore this area, search for something, and just look through it thoroughly. Make sure it's not here, and then come back to this point. And it will keep track of how much you've explored and come back to that terminal. It's like, no, keep looking, or okay, well, you tried, and then it teleports you out there. There's a lot of ones like that. G4 sunbathing I keep bringing up as an example because a lot of that aligns to aligning a satellite dish so you can basically warn Earth about the 4, which like that sounds more like something out of Half-Life.
Yeah.
Than like your typical Doom clone. In fact, I think that is like the plot of Uplink, is aligning a satellite dish so you can like get a door open.
Yeah. Speaking of getting door open, I do like that it is a lot more than just find red key, red door open like Doom, or even like Blood. And instead of it, that's like find the skull key to open the skull door. But like that was very, very common with these kind of games. I mean, Doom did it, so everyone else did it. But this one, it's like it's baked into the story. I really like. There's like a lot of setting pieces in those terminals. It talks about like the Mars colony and I forget what they called. They're the potato shaped.
Oh yeah, the crisps.
Yes, something like that. But they're basically planet-sized like warehouses that float back and forth between Earth and Mars so that they can move resources. And it talks about how like that's how Mars gets colonized, but then the crisps stop working, and so
like Martians have a revolt.
There's a Martian revolt, and they go into like a huge wealth disparity, and all their money is being pumped into building the Marathon in general. And so by the time the Marathon's built and leaves, like Mars is like in a disaster place. And then it also talks about how like AI rampancy, essentially when an AI goes rogue and it just grows out of control
beyond its limitations,
and what happens with that, how it affects systems. It talks about the couple times it's happened in history, how it's like it gets really in depth. It's really interesting if you find these terminals in the levels. Like part of me was like, I was trying to get through more of the game, so I didn't, but like part of me wants to go back through and actually like find all the terminals and read them all because they're really interesting. And getting back to what I was saying about the doors, though, you do find it like a side terminal, essentially, that's just talking about, like, yeah, this is all this rampancy stuff. And then the AI you're working with is like, by the way, the terminal that handles, like, controlling doors has gone rampant, so we'll have to do it manually.
Yeah.
So, like, it in the story, there's a reason that it can't just open a door for you.
Exactly. You spend a lot of time with him as him being your caretaker, but you are at the whims of two different AIs. There are 3 aboard the Marathon. One is Leela.
That's the one you start with.
That's
correct?
the one you start with. She's more helpful, more direct, and more like, we need to get these like hostile aliens off of the Marathon and take the fight back to Tau Ceti and survive this. She's very to the point.
Very practical.
Very practical. And she's in charge of really most of the operations aboard the Marathon that concern you. Then there's Tycho, who's sort of the science and engineering AI. In the later half of the game, you spend most of your time with an AI called Durandal. Durandal is the rampant AI in question. Part of the reason for its rampancy is it has been on this ship for several centuries. It is a highly advanced artificial intelligence. And the thing it is mainly tasked with is opening and closing doors and moving elevators.
Yeah, which it does actually get into a little bit in the game, how important those things are. They're simple tasks, but like it's important to like measure like oxygen leakage and things like that. Like it is a really important job, so it makes sense that they would put an AI in charge of all of that. But at the same time, it's a very simple task, and I think it's interesting that after that happens, Leela is immediately like, I've taken over all this. Let's keep going. Also, I've lost power, so I'm struggling to do my regular stuff, but I just took this. Like, it had a very simple job, to the fact that the other AI almost hand waves like, oh yeah, I got this.
There's, and this is my own thinking. I don't know that this is hinted at in the game, but I think there's hints, constant hints of deliberate sabotage aboard the Marathon. Like the part you mentioned about like civil unrest on Mars, that whole historical blurb is there to justify there being an arms cache on one level. It's insane how deep they go into it. And my read on it is it's hinted at Durandal was deliberately placed here in this mundane job to develop rampancy and want to expand beyond its limits as like a form of clandestine live experimentation.
I could see that, because like I said earlier, it also talks about how it's impossible to test rampancy in a lab, because you would essentially have to have a planet-sized computer system set up as a lab, and the cost of it is just not worth it. But it talks about how the Marathon is basically a floating planet.
It is, yeah. It's literally the moon of Deimos. Really funny it being a Doom competitor that has been hollowed out and turned into a ship. It's there, like, so much thought has been put into this. So I really do love the story, and it's something that you can keep like chipping away at for decades, and people have been doing. Like, people come up with new conclusions about this series in the last couple years.
Well, like you said, it helps that they keep kind of telling the same story, and I think people tend to cross-reference them. I didn't watch it, but like as I was playing this and looking up marathon stuff, I did get like some video that was like 2 hours long, something long. It's like, Marathon and Halo crossover, do they connect? Like, fan theories that they take place in the same universe or in the same...
Short answer is absolutely not. But there's so many there's so much repeated iconography that it's almost like Bungie is trying to suggest that their protagonists are a reincarnation of the same mythical hero. And there's more, I think, to that in Halo than there is in Marathon, because
Halo's also they even added even more in the update, but it's always had those weird, just like, oh, if you find there's this weird terminal you can interact with story stuff. And that was more in the later Halos, I think, that Bungie did. In the first one, I don't think there are any, if I remember properly. I think all of those were added. There's like added content in the newest re-release. That is also really interesting that they went back and even did that. Yeah.
I mean, it's clear that Bungie and later 343 do genuinely care about this story. I mean, the reincarnation bit, one of the reasons I think about that is it's, I can't justify it off the top of my head. A lot of people who have been really into this game seem to believe that the player character is the same player character from Pathways into Darkness, which takes place some 600 or 700 years before, because there's a line about it's implied that you are something called a battle droid, which is basically, you've seen Universal Soldier. It's, super soldiers made from dead parts. And you are supposed to be, the mind of the same special forces unit that went into that pyramid in Pathways into Darkness. But that's a different issue. But it's a theme that they come back to a lot.
Yeah, and even from the little bit I was able to play of Destiny, I know it's really sad, because I feel like Destiny could have been really cool, but like the inability to still play Destiny and play, like, you can't play through the whole campaign anymore. Like, the story that was there is now inaccessible, which was the main reason I got into it. And then it's like, all right, well, you can play all these multiplayer modes. It's kind of frustrating. Like,
highly frustrating. I think
I would totally just, even if it's online, I would totally just do like a solo player story it's basically Halo, you know what I mean? It's like a new Halo, and now it's like chopped up. We can talk about that more when we get to the future of Marathon too.
Yeah. I want to come back to their idea of a 10-year live service game, since we're past that mark now.
Yeah.
I believe that was 2014, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like the story in general, like common Bungie themes in terms of alien slavers, revolts. I'm sorry, there's a minor spoiler. This game is older than most of the audience. You do see an uprising the same way that you do see in other Halo games. There's rampant, unreliable AI companions. The story is like much deeper than 90s Doom clones, but you see themes of self-actualization, death and inevitability, and escaping your own limitations. Like an arc word of this game is escape will make me God, because the main thing driving Durandal's motivations is, I have calculated the inevitable closure of the universe. Now I need to figure out how to survive that.
Interesting.
That's his main motivation. I mean, like, and if you really explore around and get familiar with grenade jumping and all the other weird fucky physics engine tricks, the game dives more into Greek mythology, dreams and memories, secret societies. And my favorite is, this is probably like one of the early games that really talks about player and agency. Like the whole like, oh, you really love killing, don't you? Is like almost feels like a jab at the player, where the forces of the game are taunting you, the player, for following the objectives, which is nowadays kind of cheap. It's for the same reasons I think that Spec Up the Line is a little silly with the white phosphorus that you are required to do. But this, I think, like, first game I can think of that really dives into that at all.
Yeah, which is interesting. And I actually didn't know that there was grenade jumping, and that makes sense. You can actually see, if you're watching the video at some point, there's a couple times where I'll see like these little platforms that looks like there's a door up ahead, and you see me kind of circle around trying to figure out like how I get up there, and then eventually I'm like, whatever, and move on. I didn't know there was grenade jumping in this.
It's there, and the game's levels, like, they hide the most secretive stuff for players that exploit the physics engine in ways that take a long time to master. I've never been able to do it. And it's not as easy as like rocket jumping in Quake or later, because you cannot aim all the way down. Your up and down aiming cone is like a matter of like 30 degrees, 45 degrees. It's not enough to work with, so you really have to get weird with it to get into those areas. But you can. People have done it.
That's interesting. I might mess around with that a little bit after. We'll probably go over a little bit of what I have filmed already, so maybe I'll end with some footage of me attempting to grenade jump. We'll see.
Yeah, it's this is a game about shooting aliens in corridors, by the way.
Yeah.
So how do we get this running?
Oh, very complex.
Right. Well, according to the manual, Marathon claims it will run on minimum specs on a Macintosh with a Motorola 608020 processor. I've tried this on a Macintosh LC3 with a 68030 processor, and it is really sluggish. So I would take their suggestion to run it on a 68040 more seriously, and you'll probably get smoother gameplay. Also, Marathon requires a full-color Macintosh, so unless you're Action Retro, I don't think you're going to get this running on a monochrome classic Mac like an SE30, even if it has a requisite processor. Also, if you want to run network games with other players, you need to upgrade your system to Mac System 7 or later. No, I'm just fucking with you. It's free on Steam. If you have a computer that is like newer than like the second Bush administration, you can run this game.
And even then, you could probably...
What do you have some convoluted reason you can't use Steam? The Steam port is based on a fan-made source port called ALF1. You can find that. I mean, honestly, it's easy to Google. I think it's alf1.loohan.com. We'll tell you how to spell that later if you really want to find out, or just tag us on the Discord. We'll give you the link. But it's free on Steam. That is the easiest way to play it. That is the most up-to-date version of the game, and that is the version I found last time I tried that people are still playing multiplayer. It's not hugely active, but there are lots of sub communities out there that do organize network games, so you can still play this game in multiplayer.
So is it competitive multiplayer, or is it cooperative multiplayer?
I have only played competitive multiplayer.
Okay.
here and there. I don't see how it would not be possible to do cooperative play, but multiplayer was originally designed with the very much the whole. Can we get like a sound bite of Bill Clinton saying "kill your friends"? It's that kind of ethos at display. You know, it's
Very of the time. Like
very
almost
of the time.
every shooter at the time had to have some sort of. Even Blood had like competitive. I've never played Blood or Shadow Warrior. I've only ever played Doom multiplayer online, but or Doom and Duke.
Doom and Duke.
From that era, anyway.
I've played Doom and one of the Marathon games online. I played a little bit of like Marathon 1's multiplayer when it got re-released on Steam. But it's the same pace as like Infinity's multiplayer, which is fucking frantic. It's insane. Like your lifespan lasts a matter of minutes. If you've seen some old like Half-Life Deathmatch maps on like Crossfire or whatever, it's like that kind of pace. Like you're gonna live, you're gonna rack up kills, but you are gonna live for like a minute or two if you're really good. It's in like it to some that's not appealing. But watch some Marathon Network games on YouTube to kind of get an idea of the pacing. It's absolutely frenetic.
Yeah. And the pacing of this game in general is very interesting because it does feel, I don't mean this is an insult, but it is slow. It's very methodical. You're exploring. But then all of a sudden you'll turn around and there'll be like 8-4 waiting on you. And it gets very frantic, very fast paced, like quickly. Even at the beginning, I think it's interesting how far like enemies will hear you and rush you. Like you think, oh, is this first level? It's like Doom or something. There's gonna be one enemy. You'll fight it. You'll get like you shoot that first enemy, and like 4 more immediately start charging at you.
Which, yeah, I wanted to mention that they respond to sound and visibility, which the latter doesn't come into play very much.
But there are parts where there's like little cutouts or windows where you can see into a next area, and if they see you, they'll go like running around the map to track you down.
Yeah, and which is another fun element of this is it has like an alien style motion tracker in the corner of its weird like Cruelty Squad border display.
Yeah, we do need to talk about the UI.
We need to talk about the UI. I love it.
I think it's cool. It sets the mood really well. It was also at the time a way to get a little bit more out of the press. Keep the processing down because they're not having to render full screen graphics. It's kind of this pre-rendered UI with a couple elements, and
the actual playable area is a much lower resolution.
Yeah, but there you also I know it's an Aleph one. I don't know if it's in the original one. There is an F key you can press to change the size of that or get rid of the UI. But without the map, I feel like this game would be a nightmare.
With the source ports, I don't know if this is still the case. I don't know if someone has tackled porting the original Marathon, but for the longest time, what you saw of Marathon in Aleph 1 was like a ground up, like level geometry recreation of the original Marathon, rather than trying to port that strange engine into the modern era. So I don't think so. I think that was a feature of later games because you have an kind of something in between a Doom HUD and what you had there. You have kind of like a bottom bar, not a portrait or anything, but you still have the motion tracker. You still have like your inventory. I'm using air quotes that shows your ammo reserves and your weapons. You can see your oxygen and health meter.
No, I never got to the point where the what's a good way to put it, where the oxygen came into play. Is that a later game thing?
In the later games it matters a lot more because you have some underwater sections. In Marathon 1, there's really only one level where your oxygen reserves come into play, and that is G-force sunbathing, because you are on like kind of the exterior of the colony ship, so you need to it adds like a timed element.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if, because there's a couple levels too where you can like see through a window, you can see like a dock with a ship in it. The very first level, actually, I believe if you look around, or maybe it's level 2. It's been a minute.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, that's the very first level. You can see the hangar where your escape pod landed.
Yeah, and you can kind of go on both sides of it and see. And I was actually very curious if you could get out there or not. So I don't know if there's like little secret areas or something that might use oxygen too, but
I don't know. I think just because of the way it manifests in game, I feel like whether or not oxygen matters at like a programming or level design level is something that needs to be determined by the overall map,
not an area.
Right. So it seems to me like it's just a switch that's toggled on and off.
Okay.
In terms of the game's logic. In Marathon 2 and Infinity, you do have those side spaces where you can go in and out of areas where you need oxygen. There's a frustrating amount of swimming in 2.
Okay.
For a game where none of your weapons work underwater. In Infinity, I think you get like a gun, like a submachine gun that you can get that fires like in vacuum and maybe underwater, and it's like something that you can miss if you're not looking for it.
Yeah, I do like the weird electric like brass knuckle thing that you have for melee. I didn't use it a whole lot, but because I couldn't get the timing right. In a lot of games, there's like blood, you can kind of get the pitchfork, you go and hit the pitchfork, pull back. I had trouble getting it to connect without also taking damage. I'm like, it's just easier to use the pistol.
It's a timing thing. The brass knuckles are really fun. I mean, like in real life, brass knuckles, if you hit someone with a haymaker with brass knuckles on, that will kill them. So I think that's effectively powerful. But the game does it in a weird way where you have to learn the rhythm of like both of your punches. I don't know if you punch with both hands in the first one or not. In the
I think
second
it's just
one,
the one.
Yeah.
In one.
But in each of the games, if I remember right, if you get a running start, you punch harder. So you're literally you can literally just run up and like just haymaker somebody.
Okay, so if you get your speed going. Yeah. I found the strategy for me was just to use the pistol until I didn't have ammo, and then use everything else as like a backup. The other weapons are interesting, but they are complicated. Like the machine gun you get is borderline like a shotgun with a spread on it.
I wanted to mention that. Yes.
I thought that was interesting. It took me a little while to get used to.
I'm glad you picked up on that too. Like I thought it was very strange that Marathon never had a shotgun. 2 has a shotgun, and it's one of the best shotguns in any game ever. But Marathon 1, the assault rifle is so wild and inaccurate that it functions more like a shotgun. You use this more in tight corners where there's a group of aliens coming at you, and you just hose the spot down until the threat is gone. You use we mentioned alternate fire. Bungie's obsessed with numerology, so you have a grenade launcher with 7 grenades. The number 7 is going to come up in like every Bungie game to like a cult-like degree. But the grenade launcher is used for a lot of puzzle solving too. There are areas where the game actually spawns grenades for you, and you have to like arc your grenade shots to hit a switch to open a door, and you can't reach that switch otherwise.
Interesting. I did not get to that. There was also an area, now that I'm thinking about grenade jumping, where it's kind of frustrating. I just kind of guessed at it till I got it, but it's the one where there's the moving platforms, and you have to hit the switches in the right order so you can cross. Like you go up the stairs, and then there's not those stairs. There's one platform that always moves up and down, so you can ride it up. And then you have to get across with the right combination of switches. Yeah,
that's the one level I meant. Maybe. Oh, gosh, there's a couple like that. Colony Ship for Sale is the one I'm thinking of. That is the worst offender of this. And it's almost like this absolute slog of a level is trying to get you to empathize with Durandal, who, is a living, thinking entity, a mind of its own that has been, for centuries, the level you're playing is all it has been doing for 300 years.
Yeah, just balancing doors and platforms. And
it's like you have to run all the way over the map. You have to memorize where the specific switches for which platform are, and it's a very long roundabout route. You are going to be on that level for a long time in your first playthrough, and you're going to have to do it over and over again to get the staircase correct, because you have to also like kind of exploit. There is no jumping in this, but you can sort of mantle up ledges, in the same way that you can run up stairs in Doom. There's like a minimum height that you can mantle up, and you have to look at that from a side angle at various heights and basically trial and error through. And I think if you don't finish the game, it's fine. But if you commit to playing, you need to at least try that level, because it is very frustrating on purpose in a way that kind of, I think, is trying to make you empathize with a character that is kind of hostile to you for a large part of the game.
Yeah. It is interesting. I've played Blood so many times. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll play this again. But this made me want to like finish this one and look into the sequels. Maybe we'll come back to the sequels someday. But I also would love to do Pathways in Darkness and maybe even Halo. But yeah, it is a very interesting game. The design is very unique. Like even like after this, you don't see a lot of like marathon inspired games. Like other games add puzzles and stuff, but I can't think of a lot that's like a direct. Even Halo kind of abandons that. There's not puzzles in Halo. Halo's very much, all right, Marine, you've got to go push this button.
I think that the first and last marathon like you get, and this is going to be a weird take that only I believe. I think the first and last marathon like you get in any meaningful sense, aside from like actual Bungie games, is Half-Life.
I could see that because Half-Life's got all the physics puzzles to show off its physics engine.
The first one, less so. There are physics puzzles, but it's kind of moving across a single plane. Or it's smoke and mirrors from the Gold Source engine. But yeah, there's a lot of that objective-based stuff, like the train level where you control a rail cart all revolves around like you need to launch a satellite rocket so we can stop all these aliens coming in. And and then it throws you into a believable place, makes you navigate that believable place to get to the center and launch this rocket. I think that is a path that was tread more by Marathon. It's not something that Valve, I think, came up with in a vacuum. And then, it's Half-Life, so people saw Half-Life successes and they're more content with doing it that way.
Yeah, I would say there's a ton of Half-Life likes.
Yeah, absolutely. The only Marathon like I can think of is like, I don't know, Citadel, and that's a weird game. We're going to cover at some point we're going to cover some borderline horny stuff, and I don't think we should touch Citadel.
That's fair. I mean, I looked up Marathon like games just to see if there's stuff that people said like, this is what similar, and like, honestly, people are mostly just listing other Bungie games, like, and Tarkov. I've heard a little Tarkov and...
Tarkov, that's interesting.
Tarkov and Apex. But I can see Apex in the design and story, but not so much the gameplay.
It's really... I want to dissect that idea a little bit more on my own time, because I've always been asking why, and we're coming to this pretty soon, but why the new Marathon was slated to be an extraction shooter, and then you bring up... I mean, Apex isn't an extraction shooter per se, but Tarkov wrote the book on extraction shooters. So that's very interesting to me. I wonder if there are like something analogous to terminal entries there. Because like, to me, that is the most Marathon thing about Marathon.
Oh, they're specifically talking about the new Marathon.
Oh, okay.
People are comparing the new one already, and they're like, what are games that are like, and everyone's like, well, here's games like Marathon 2025. Cough. But
you mean Marathon 2028?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, like most of the people are also just saying these are games with similar stories. Gameplay wise, it does kind of stand on its own, which is interesting. Especially of that era. I feel like even though this game was really successful, like the series really cemented Bungie as like a big enough studio to then go on to work with Sony, and then Microsoft bought them out from under.
Mid-Halo development, which is, It's really funny, still funny to me, that like the messiah figure of Mac gaming gets bought out by Microsoft. That's never not going to be hilarious to me.
This is memory, so it could be fallible, but from what I remember too, I'm pretty sure there was like, they gave Apple a choice, like, hey, Microsoft wants to buy this game, but we've been like doing Apple forever. Do you want us to stay with? And I'm pretty sure Apple is pretty much, we're not a gaming device. We don't care.
I would believe that. I've never heard that. But you know who originally announced Halo?
It was at an Apple event,
It's literally Steve Jobs was the first person to publicly announce Halo.
Yeah, I might post that video in the Discord just for people.
So it was, I mean, regardless, I would not be surprised to learn that Apple was not willing to make some like
concessions
for gaming, because that's exactly the story you hear about a lot of Mac ports. Half-Life was, I'm sorry for those keeping up on the drinking game, was originally going to have a Mac port. Later it did, and now it doesn't. That's a whole other story. But it shows you why, like, the philosophy at Apple is, well, you have no idea that whether something's going to be backwards compatible or not, and anything that won't be backwards compatible to them deserves to be left in the dust. I'm hesitant to bring up the iPad port of Marathon because I believe that was delisted because it ran on an older version of iOS.
Yeah, but
like lots of iOS games.
When the Aleph 1 did get released, we looked it up. You can get this on your phone. iPod, it's on the Apple Store.
You can get this on your iPhone. I don't know if you
Is it not on the Android?
I couldn't find it on the Play Store. That doesn't mean it's not playable on Android. I just there's a point where I look at that and I don't want to do the extra research at that point. I did try looking. I didn't find anything. But if you're trying to run this on a Chromebook, congrats on getting this podcast on school Wi-Fi. Finish your homework. And if you're trying to run this on a Raspberry Pi, no, you're lying. You have another computer you can use.
Yeah. I did look it up. There is a Android port on GitHub, and that was released like 4 years ago. So,
okay,
but
yeah.
it's for the Pixel 4 era. So who knows if it works on modern Android, because it gets updated so often. Sometimes you have to do funky stuff to get old Android stuff working.
I have a Pixel 4a sitting right next to me.
Oh, there you go.
And yeah, I have a real jalopy of a phone. Okay, so it does work on Android. I mean, this was released as freeware before some of the listeners here were born. The source code has been out that long. It was released in source code came out, I think, 2004, and that's when the whole trilogy was just thrown out as freeware.
Which is interesting that they...
It is. I have distinct memories of... Now, were you at our middle school where they had the iMacs?
I believe so.
I distinctly remember getting on school Wi-Fi and downloading all the Marathon games in the computer lab and playing them, at school.
Yeah, and that was 3 years after Halo, because Halo came out in 2001. So that was like mid them working on Halo. They just kind of threw those out there. Was it for an anniversary, maybe?
Well, probably. The first game came out in 94. The rest of it came out as freeware in 2004, so probably an anniversary.
It could have just been the 20-year Marathon anniversary. We're releasing the series. Oh, yeah, 10 year. Duh. It is 2004, not 14. But, yeah.
Feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, that 94 to 2004 feels like such a long period of time.
Especially when you're looking at games.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the gap between this game we're covering here and Halo 2.
Yes.
That is the gap between Doom 2 and Half-Life 2.
Yeah. Or Doom 3D just about.
Or Doom 3. That's a much better example. And it's just now you look back 10 years and we're still re-releasing the same games we were playing 10 years ago.
No, I mean, graphics have gotten better, but I feel like
marginally.
Game design has kind of stalled, but
game design is stalled, and
I feel like we're also that indie revolution that people were saying was going to happen in 2008 is kind of happening now.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I specifically remember everyone online being like, "Oh, the internet has revolutionized games. Games are going to be completely taken over by indie developers, and all these big studios are going to go out of business." The exact opposite happened until now. People are actually like more into indie games, and
yeah.
Like, there are a lot more, like, even things like Devolver and companies like that kind of just, like, mid-tier. But most of their games, they don't make. They're a publisher. They're kind of like A24 almost, where, like, they're a investment company that, like, kind of picks up these smaller companies and gets them a foot in the door.
That sounds about right. I mean, it's also what we see, at least in, like, PC games, is until recently, a bias towards like stricter and stricter system requirements for really marginal gains. Let's be honest. If you're watching on a normal monitor, you cannot really see the gains between now and 7 or 8 years ago unless you are really squinting and you have a utility that is tracking your FPS.
The only reason I can usually tell the difference is for some reason, when my last job I was working for home, and for some reason they gave us 4K monitors to look at spreadsheets, and then I didn't return them. So, I mean, they did make us all the at-home equipment other than the computer itself. They just let us keep. But regardless, like you have to have top of the line like monitors to really see the difference. And unless you're someone like a friend of mine who like codes professionally and like he has everything set so small, he needs a high quality monitor to tell the difference. Like, I don't know. Most people I know have like mid-tier monitors and don't really worry about it.
I can't think of anything that came out in the last 4 or 5 years that has made me made me want to experience it so bad that I'm willing to upgrade what I have now.
The only
last thing I did was Cyberpunk.
Yeah, for me, the one that made me upgrade was Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 had very high... I will say that game looks phenomenal. It's also a very dark game, and I will say games that are very dark sometimes usually do have a lot more niche detail stuff to get looking right. Yeah, or it gets muddy.
Even then, did you do a complete overhaul, or did you upgrade the single bottleneck?
I upgraded the RAM and the graphics card.
That's basically what I did for Cyberpunk, and it was not a top-of-the-line card. It was something to get me playing the game.
Now, previously I had done the opposite with my computer, where I had pretty much upgraded for my last build everything but the graphics card and said, oh, I'll buy a new graphics card down the line. So I kind of bounced back and forth. But regardless, it is annoying with modern games. I think we're stepping into the future of marathon discussion. This is moving in that direction. But yeah. Like, make fun of if you want, but there's still, like, a couple games that I play just because I've had friends since college that play them, and it's like, oh, yeah, I'll play a couple rounds of Overwatch. Oh, yeah, we'll hop on and play. Oh, you don't have the kids tonight? Let's, play a little bit of, like, Marvel Rivals or Fortnite or something like that. Like, and like, Overwatch 2 is not much better looking than Overwatch 1, and it's having graphics card issues with people who have 40 and 50 series cards. Like, the new top-of-the-line cards are having driver issues that are crashing and getting people banned for abandoning matches. Like, you'd think a game that old would be so easy, but like one driver update will like break a game.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that too.
Like you were saying though, everything's so marginal. It's like everything's like has to be so specific to get these like weird games running.
Yeah, well, industry plant. What is it? Pirate Software or Pirate? Yeah, Pirate Software. Our favorite industry plant. It doesn't want you playing old games anyway, as long as they're live service games. But yeah, it's
fucking dork. I don't know. I don't want. I don't want a drama farm, but
no. I think that summarizes it. The official stance of Stinky Gamer Pleasure Dome is Thor is a dork.
Yes.
I don't know enough to know that he has ill intent or if he's just a dork. So
just go watch the video of him having a WoW meltdown.
Oh Lord.
That's really all I have to say.
It's
about
also
that.
Like I can't give a shit about what he's talking about because I'm not that into Blizzard. Blizzard's one of those companies that I avoid, not in the same way I do Ubisoft, but that's one of my like. It's because it's convenient for me not to give them my support. I don't really care about much that they have to offer. For you, it's different.
I only play Overwatch because my friends in college, who I made a lot of my college friends and online friends from that time, that's like the game that we all still play or have access to. It's free. We literally, a friend we hadn't talked to in 5 years was like, hey, I finished like this college training program I got some free time. Do you guys want to hop on Overwatch again? It was like, oh shit, let's catch up with our dude. Like, it's been years. Like, sometimes my friend's wife will get on with us now and play. Like, it's fun. But, like, other than that, I'm never playing World of Warcraft again. Like, it's a nightmare. I had some friends playing it, and they're like, get back into it. They, like, rehauled the new user experience, and it makes no sense. You're bouncing around stories that are, like, years old, and it's, like, every 5 levels, it's like, you unlock this new thing, try it out, and then it teleports you to a new area in this gigantic map with no explanation of why you're there. Like, it's a nightmare game. that's been going for so long that like it's inexplicable.
I think that is an excellent pivot point, actually.
Yeah.
Because looking at World of Warcraft, it seems like that WoW is almost like a proto live service game,
Yeah.
if not exactly that. And
it pretty much is. Like there have been fan servers the whole time, and now they're even basically running
now there's like
fan
sanctioned
servers.
fan servers.
Well, they have official servers that are like old builds of the game for people, and like that's like the only way you can. That also touches into the problems with Destiny, where like that's kind of the only way you can experience like the story up to where it is in WoW is going back and playing the classic servers or whatever they call them, because like yeah, a lot of those missions are technically still in the game, but like the maps changed, and like some of the main NPCs, spoiler, in World of Warcraft for a 20-year-old game or whatever, die throughout the story. So like you have to take quests from a guy whose throne's been destroyed, and every time you walk by it, it's a ghost town. But like 10 years ago, it was like the main hub of one of the factions, and like it's bizarre trying to play through it. And like
yeah, and it takes so much of an audience. And it is valid that that people want to re-experience that. Live service, when it's done well, is a very cool spectacle. It does make you feel like you have an impact on the story, marginal as it may be, in a multiplayer game. That is cool.
And WoW is like the peak of that, I feel like, because there's people who's literally like, I know whose like parents played in like college, and now and they grew up playing it with their parents, and
I think we both know like offspring of a WoW couple.
Yes.
Yeah, it's I think that ship has sailed. I think it is cool that I shit on Blizzard a lot. I think it is genuinely cool that they offer a way for disjointed as it may be for you to conduct that digital archaeology. And I also think it's because they had so much outcry when they weren't doing that.
Yeah.
But
then the problem was they also started like striking fan servers and stuff. So eventually they're like, all right, we should just do this.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder what like Helldivers is going to look like in 10 years, because like that's a big part of why I have had trouble getting back into the game. Is I feel like I have to give to this game on its own schedule rather than on mine, and that makes me resistant to it.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really fun for like the first year when I had friends on console. I had multiple groups of friends who was like, oh, pop on, I can play with some people, it'll be fun. I'll get through the pass I bought, but there's all this free stuff. But like the free stuff is kind of dried up, like the free unlockable content. The story is going, but unless you are playing and reading the updates when they decide to happen, and like you're probably pretty lost. I don't know. I feel like that's the problem with live service content, is you also have to be there for it.
Exactly. And that doesn't sound appealing to me. To like it's like being a fan of like your favorite basketball team, but you can never ever rewatch a game. Well, I mean, I suppose you can if somebody is like uploading content and it hasn't been like DMCA'd, but like on YouTube or something. But yeah, it's a very strange.
It's also harder. Like basketball, you can like watch the news and get a recap,
Right.
or look online. It's hard to like go online and be like, so what happened
In the war.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what people do. There are whole channels on every social media outlet devoted to giving you updates on how the war or wars, I don't know how many we're fighting right now, in Helldivers is going. And honestly, it seems like a lot of money to spend on something if most people are going to engage it in that way.
A lot of it feels like to play a live service game, it has to be your main game.
Right. And I love Helldivers. It's a very fun game. It is a fun enough game that I could just pick it back up again today, jump in a match, and still have plenty of fun. Playing like the first half of Metal Gear Solid 5 over and over and over again, it doesn't have that much staying power.
Yeah, and that's an amazing game.
And that's an amazing game. And there's nothing wrong with how Helldivers is made. It's just you're asking a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about them trying to do that with Marathon and turning it into an extraction shooter, which is like kind of famously. So for those who hadn't heard, Marathon was being a sequel was coming out under 343, I believe.
No, it was Bungie.
Oh, it was Bungie?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bungie was bringing Marathon back.
That's part of the reason for the studio split is, some devs wanted to keep working on Halo and other devs wanted to work on something new and also retain their old IPs. So
Okay.
that was part of the deal is Bungie got to keep their old IPs like Marathon.
But what's interesting is extraction shooters are like kind of famous for not lasting very long. Like they tend not to have staying power. There's a lot of them that like pop up for like a couple months and then kind of die off. I remember there's a big indie like dungeon exploring one that was really popular, and then there were some legal problems and it basically killed it because no one could play it for 3 months. It's a game that needs a big community, but it's not cooperative, but it's also more like story-based and interactive usually than something like Fortnite, like a battle royale. Like you are going into a world, you're going for objectives, whether it's just loot or like mission-based stuff, trying to get that and escape while other players are trying to get the same things.
Yeah, it's a very volatile.
Yeah,
I think is what you said when I was talking with you about it earlier. I think that's a good word, is because it's trying to do it's trying to wear so many different hats, and when it works, oh man, it is so cool. Like I've never played Tarkov, and I've so many times almost bought it and then looked at my like bank account and thought like, nah, I'll play something else.
Yeah, I guess they're saying Helldivers 2 counts as an extraction shooter. I feel like it's a little different.
It's a little different,
it's not
but
competitive.
It checks all the boxes.
It doesn't have the competitive element.
That's true.
That most extraction shooters have, because you're one team. It's PvE.
Yeah.
It's a team of people playing against the environment and the NPCs in it. Whereas usually when I think extraction shooter, I think of it being a PvP game with PvE elements.
I think it ticks off all of the boxes, and it is like if extraction shooters are a gradient, Helldivers is at the very end of it, but it ticks all the other boxes. And I think PvP isn't necessary, but it is necessary in like a lot of the successful ones. PvE is consistent across pretty much all of them.
Yeah, the biggest examples I can think of are Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, and then the one I was thinking that kind of fell apart was Dark and Darker. That one was really cool. And then there's like a demo period, and then like some weird legal shit happened. I didn't keep up with it very well, but it kind of just disappeared. Apparently it's kind of back, but I don't think it ever got the player base it really needed back. So I could be wrong about that. I just remember being really into it for like a week with my friends, and then it just being like completely disappearing and going like completely black, and us being like, well, and never going back to it.
Yeah. And I think like it is so tied to the live service model. Can you think of an extraction shooter, like genuine question, I don't know, can you think of an extraction shooter that does not use a live service model?
No. I mean, I'm looking at a list of them right now, and I mean, the ones that Wikipedia list, absolutely not. I think maybe the least is like Battlefield 2042. I mean, that is a live service game all the way through, but I don't know. At least of the ones I've played, absolutely not. Because to have those games be successful has to be cheap to free, so it can keep a player base of like...
And we're going to come back to this, but we're going to keep talking about this. But by the way, Marathon wanted a full price.
Yeah, that was going to be a problem.
That was going to be a problem.
Yeah, and like, you have to have like a dedicated fan base who's actually keeping up with it and paying for the updates to get the new content and whatever, as well as a rotating door of people being like, this game is free, I can pop in, it's cheap, and I can play it for the weekend with my friends, and if I like it, then I'll start paying for the content. But you have to have it easy to hook people, and then get them into the content trickle. That's kind of how these games work. It's really hard to do like a you pay once and that's just it forever kind of format, because
and I'm sure there was a model in mind for Marathon where you're expected to keep giving them money.
Yeah.
I didn't follow the game that closely, other than like dipping my toe in the ARG briefly.
I looked in the ARG a little bit, and I watched like the trailers when they came out.
I didn't follow the economics of the game because, one, that's not like at the time that wasn't terribly interesting to me.
I mean, I straight up told you when the trailer dropped and you watch it, it's like, I'll play this if you do. Otherwise, I'm not touching this.
Yeah,
was my immediate vibe.
Which I think is a lot of I mean, that is the other thing is how many of us have, like a half dozen Steam games installed that friends wanted to play for a week. I mean, Destiny is on that list for you, me, and probably everybody that's imagining this scenario. And then they didn't want to pick it up. You need to have a consistent player base, and with live service models, you have to have like a fucking DM. A part of the reason that Helldivers is one of the few successes in, I guess maybe extraction shooters, but definitely live service, is because it is so closely monitored in a story sense. Like,
it's monitored, and it's a game that like it gives you enough motivation to keep playing that, like I said, I even till today I have multiple groups of friends who play it. Not as many as I did when it launched that first year, right?
Yeah.
Like I think most people, and then everyone I know, like every 6 months, one of those like 3 groups of friends will be like, "Hey, let's play this. Play it for a couple days, then do something else."
Yeah,
like
I'm kind of glad that Marathon got postponed because they don't have the content period for that kind of game.
Well, speaking of content, I think now is also the time to talk about the controversy.
Yeah.
So,
2 points I also want to cover is what the fuck is Bungie doing, and also what the fuck is Sony doing, probably in reverse order.
Yeah.
But what the fuck is Bungie doing, actually?
Yeah, so
starting with plagiarism.
Yeah, that was interesting. So the Marathon launch, they had this really beautiful trailer, but it's the kind of trailer you're watching, you're like, okay, well, this is definitely not gonna look like this when it gets to my computer. It looks like something that was made for like a movie, you know what I mean? It's got that like, okay, this is probably not how that final game's gonna look. I think it even has like a not gameplay footage. Like it's
that's about as I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, but essentially you can go look it up. We mostly audio based. We can put some pictures up in the video.
Yeah.
But essentially, very likely they got caught stealing a bunch of art.
Allegedly.
Whether or not that actually happened, it destroyed the optics for this game. Even if everything was completely above board legally, I think it really just wrecked their what people were saying about this game. And I think part of the problem there, going into what the fuck is Bungie doing question, is they basically released like a short film that barely hints at what gameplay is going to be like, and then so all people could talk about was the art direction and the graphics. And when that all of a sudden people are saying, multiple people are coming forward and being like, oh, this is stolen, it kind of wipes the board on everything that trailer had given us.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, when I say it doesn't give us much of the gameplay, like, yeah, there's going to be shooting, you're going to be finding loot, but you don't see what that's going to look like. You know what I mean? It's like watching the opening trailer to Overwatch, versus what Overwatch actually plays like.
In other words, the trailer, and I there's been a couple. I'm assuming right now we're talking about the more recent cinematic trailer that they got, I think, like a Love, Death, and Robots director for.
Yeah, I mean, trailers are beautiful.
That one shows off gameplay elements if you don't know exactly what an extraction shooter is, and you have read an article in Forbes. If that is your backstory, you learn something from this trailer. What it doesn't tell you is what sets this apart from Hunt, what sets this apart from Tarkov, what sets this apart from Helldivers in terms of is Bungie going to give a shit, which is a valid question that I think a lot of Destiny players continually ask.
And this is something that I wonder about going into what the fuck is Sony is doing too. I'm very curious if Sony was like, all right, you can keep all your original IPs, you'll own them, but you have to make this type of game. Because Sony seems dead set on following like 5-year-old trends. Like, it's like Sony forgets that games take time to develop, and they either rush stuff out, or by the time something comes out, the trend is dead. The way they've designed it is long past being interesting. Like, we were talking about Concord before this.
Before we get into that,
okay,
I do want to say, what the fuck is Bungie doing? I think it is a mix of, me personally, I think like a little bit of everything is true. I've seen like the dev diaries where they show like a clear rationale for like the design language of what they want to make. I also think that Sony has been, breathing down the neck of a really mismanaged company, by the way, but breathing down the neck of Bungie, giving them hard deadlines, giving them kind of meddling in what type of game they can make. Again, that's just my read on it. That's not, the reality necessarily. And I think when people who are contractors and can be fired for wearing their hat the wrong way and left out of the credits, I think there is an incentive to cheat if you need to make a deadline.
Absolutely. It's the same reason like kids cheat on homework.
Right.
Like some kids were just never going to do it, right? But at a company, like when you get hired, it's a little different of an experience.
Yeah,
like
and Bungie is
huge.
Fucked up.
They're not been managed well for a long time, but
No.
what I was going to say was like they're also a company that like people who went to college 10 years ago are probably just stepping into their career. Like people would have gone to school to make video games because they played Halo,
right,
and be entering the industry now.
There are people who
like this was their dream job.
Destiny 1 and are entering the industry because of that. And it's also like Bungie has been hit with how many rounds of layoffs?
I don't even
More
know.
than one, certainly, but I mean, feel free to correct me. That's another element too, is get us results or say goodbye to your job security.
They've also been bouncing around with the companies they're working with so much that like...
Have they?
I mean, they went from...
Sony or Bungie?
Bungie has. They went from being... just over their overall history, but they went from being like a Mac developer to being an Xbox developer to being kind of more open to now being a Sony developer. Like,
well,
I feel like that there's a lot of people in the company too, who like probably anyone who's been there a long time, they never worked with a lot of these systems. They've been moved around. Let's see, in 2024, they laid off 17% of their workforce.
Fuck's sake.
After being bought by Sony. Additionally, 155 positions were moved directly under Sony management, and an incubation team working on a new project codenamed Gummy Bears was spun off into a separate studio under the PlayStation Studios banner. So yeah, they got fucking torn apart when Sony bought them.
Well, and it's also they were quite like I don't know why, but I remember Sony being involved from the get-go as far back as Destiny 1, but they were allowed to retain their independence. But they were working with Sony as a publisher, not as their owning party. So they do. I was reading that wrong. They had a continued relationship with Sony, as far as I know, going back to Destiny 1, do they not?
Yeah, they also did Oni for PS2.
They did. That was like Halo 1 era, though. That was solid Microsoft ownership, but that was...
They tried to open a side studio, if I remember properly. That studio did Oni. Oni didn't do well enough, and they just closed the side studio, basically, and brought people into regular Bungie.
Yeah. And then there was the one that did Stubbs the Zombie.
That was a guy who left Bungie, actually. That was an independent company, but it was one of the main designers, I'm pretty sure, for the first Halo.
Seropian. We'll have to check that. We'll have to probably throw in a voiceover.
But also, I'm just looking at articles right now, apparently from Game Reactor, talking about what these companies are fucking doing. Apparently, no employees at Bungie were informed about Marathon's postponement until the official announcement was made public by Sony. So Sony just announced that the game was delayed, and no one at Bungie knew. Like, they didn't even bother to tell people that the game they're working on was getting delayed.
Sony is, like, as far as I know, has been very publicly irritated with Bungie. But yeah, they have been like really like up in Bungie's ass. And again, Bungie, I just don't know that there are really any good guys in this scenario, except maybe individual devs that are kind of getting fucked out of this. But like Sony is like kind of maybe micromanaging them a little too much. But if you're Sony...
I mean, Sony's known for doing this.
Sony's known for doing this. Sony was probably known for doing this back when the change in ownership occurred, back before they left Microsoft. And if you put $3.6 billion into Marathon and you have a studio that is fucking up as much as Bungie, laying off all their people and getting into controversies, and it's, you know, they're laying off a chunk of their staff.
I don't know. Sony's also a bizarre company, like, overall. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they have a film studio that's basically at this point built on, we still have indefinite rights to Spider-Man, to the point where we're going to use the Spider-Man font that we designed as the logo for our game consoles because we own it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that the PS3 font was originally a Spider-Man font.
And they still use it on all their new consoles,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, and stuff. Like,
It's a cool typeface.
it is a cool typeface, but that's just how, like, Sony is basically kept afloat by Spider-Man.
And PlayStation.
And PlayStation. But even the PlayStation, like, one of their main flagship titles now is the Spider-Man games.
It's a very weird company.
And it's like them and The Last of Us.
To think that these were once like the biggest names in like consumer electronics and studio equipment.
Yeah. It's wild, the direction they've gone. And it's kind of a bummer. Like, I loved my PS1, but, like, PS2 was great, but after that, all their consoles, I've heard multiple people say this, were kind of the rich kid consoles. Like, who the fuck bought a PS3? Like, unless you're into, like, Final Fantasy and, like, specific series, everyone I know bought a 360 because they like playing Halo with their friends, and their parents were more likely to buy it for them because it was, like, $100 or more cheaper.
Yeah, but it still was never as cheap as like a GameCube.
Yeah.
Any game console, I think, was the rich kid game console for the PS3 generation, but the
That's
PS3
true.
was like for the first half of that generation. For the second half, it was very easy to get a PS3. And the Wii, yeah.
The Wii was the one everyone had. The Wii was the one people's parents bought so they could play, like, Wii Fit. The
Wii
weird
is the
console.
odd man out, as it always has been. But
Yeah.
later half of the PS3 was a good time to get in. It was not terribly expensive. I don't know that it was much more expensive, if not priced the same.
They cut a bunch of features out, but it made the console, like, affordable. Like, they cut
Right.
out backward compatibility and stuff. But
They didn't need to do that.
yeah, I'm just saying that.
But yeah.
But yeah, back on a topic. I feel like Sony's just been, like, lost for a long time. They don't really have a identity that I could strongly say. Like, Xbox has kind of become, like, very much part of, like, their Game Pass and integrated into PCs. Like, Xbox has become part of their PC brand. Like, you literally, like, borderline with what Steam's doing with the Steam Deck and the rumored Steam machines. And that sort of thing. Like, Xbox is a standalone console, but it's also just part of the Microsoft brand. Like, if you own a Microsoft computer that's good enough to play games, it's basically an Xbox. You can plug the controller straight into it, and it's, like, no different. Nintendo is the family-friendly console. It's the portable console. Nintendo's doing what Nintendo's always done. They're kind of the odd man out, but they're also the handheld market. And they're the family-friendly market.
For now, they're the handheld market.
But I don't know what Sony even is right now. Like, I feel like more people know them for their TV shows now than their games. I don't know anyone who owns a PS5.
Xbox could flop tomorrow and become wildly unprofitable tomorrow. Microsoft would lay off their studios, not rehire those people, maybe give them like a month's pay, but Microsoft would probably be fine because they have not put all their eggs in that basket. Sony, if that happened to them, I don't know that they would weather that. But I'm not a finance guy. I don't know. I see, again, Nintendo's just a weird company. They're pretty firmly a games company first, even though they've been like a taxi cab company or a love hotel company or a toy company.
Yeah, they started as like making like dice games.
What made them a household name were video games.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't really do a lot of that stuff. Yeah, they've been making movies occasionally now. Yeah, they have like some theme parks, but
do
like,
they even have like a studio though, or are they lending? Or are they
they're
just selling the rights?
They're selling the right. Whereas Sony, I feel like that's kind of what Sony is. They make these games in hopes that they can turn the game into a TV show. Like, that feels like where they are now. Like, there are game series that haven't gotten new games since like the PS3, PS4 era. They're getting TV shows now, like Twisted Metal. Like,
yeah, you know what? I think that's a good way of putting it. It seems like Sony Computer Entertainment is trying to pull this, like, is trying to pull the weight of all these other elements of Sony that are still extant and no longer really like making them money. I don't know that, like you said, they have a studio devoted to basically Spider-Man. Their consumer electronics are like you buy any kind of like Blu-ray player from Sony, and it's their fucking format, and you're getting anything else that you would have bought that wasn't Sony.
I feel like especially for people who weren't like super tech savvy, Sony used to be the company that you would buy because costs a little more. It wasn't top of line, but it costs a little more, and they would just work.
It wasn't yeah. It was kind of the Mercury of electronics rather than the Lincoln.
Yeah, but I feel like they're not that anymore. I know at Fahrenheit, a lot of people I know have like Sony TVs, and that's about it. But then again, who buys Blu-ray players anymore? Like that's even becoming a niche market. So like,
and
as far as
Sony,
consumer electronics, they don't make phones. That's like the number one consumer electronic these
not
days.
anymore. They did for a while.
Yeah, but even if they do, no one uses them. You know what I mean? Like they could start making Android phones today if they wanted to, but
they would probably not do bad either, personally.
But yeah, they're this weird,
because they have made phones for a long time.
Yeah. They're this weird amalgamation of what's left over, and every project they do has to be everything all at once. Like it has to be an IP that can expand into multiple formats. It has to sell millions of copies. It has to, like, what we say, Marathon was like over $3 billion invested into it.
Right.
And I just scrolling through the news, just they're putting $3 billion into it, constantly laying off employees, giving them harsh deadlines, all while they're complaining that, like, the employees are complaining that they don't have enough time, like, semi-publicly.
Yeah.
And, like, seems like a nightmare company.
And the fact that they're saying that semi-publicly, I'm not saying devs shouldn't speak out about those concerns, but you don't see that from other studios generally that aren't, like, on the verge of falling apart. Because those employees that speak out, they anytime you do that, you are stopping and considering, is this worth, like, this coming up at my employee review or whatever, right? I think a lot of people are Bungie or might be, I'm not gonna say that, but I do worry for Bungie. Sony as a corporate entity, I don't know. Bungie, unfortunately, I don't have, like, high hopes for.
Yeah.
Looking anything like, a studio that we would support, for one, but existing, that's in question.
Yeah, I don't know. Sony's just so bizarre. And like Marathon, honestly, was the kind of franchise that could have at least gotten me playing one of their games. I wouldn't buy a PlayStation, but like I would have. But if it had done well, it was a cool enough. Like I said, if you played it, I was gonna play it. Like it would have at least got me. I don't think I've played a Sony game since that first Spider-Man game came out.
Yeah, and
like that was a good game.
And they keep trying to trying and failing to siphon, like, PC audience by, like, releasing ports on PC. And then expecting you to go and buy another console
to play the sequels.
Like
that's what they did with, like, the Spider-Man games. So, like, we'll release the game, like, I can't remember his name, but, like, one of their leads over there was like, yeah, we'll release a game or two as an advertisement, and then you can buy a PlayStation to play it. Otherwise, wait 5 or 6 years if we do port it. And it's like, clearly that's kind of the way forward, is to open PC, because more and more, like, people, and most people I know who have kids who are old enough to play games, don't ask for consoles anymore. If they do, they want a Nintendo, and if not, they want a gaming PC.
Or most they want a tablet or a,
Yeah, younger kids get tablets or a Switch, and then my friends with, like, older kids in middle school, high school, they all want gaming PCs.
Right.
No one's asking for an Xbox. No one's asking for a PS5. Like,
because what do you have on either of those platforms that you can't get on PC? You have something, not much.
Yeah,
not much, and the pattern is like, the observable pattern is that it's going to find its way to PC anyway, and if it doesn't, you're going to be able to emulate it.
Yeah. So if it's not a Switch or a Steam Deck, like, consoles are basically their main market is for people who've been buying consoles their whole life, and that's how they know how to play video games. And, like, now, like, this is another, like, whiner gamer topic, but, like, you don't even get the game on a disc anymore. Like, anymore, you still have to download it anyway. So it's like, and instead it's you're buying a lockdown PC.
You're buying a lockdown PC. And we can talk at length about how PC is turning into a lot of the same things if you're not on Steam. And even if you are on Steam, But that's a whole other story. There's a reason I haven't bought a Ubisoft game since Far Cry 3, and I bought that used like 4 years after it came out. But it's there's not a ton of reasons to back to the live service thing. You don't own anything. You are along for the ride and here to share the memories. How many people are talking about their memories in playing fucking, I don't know, H1Z1? How many people are talking about how much fun they used to have in PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds?
Yeah. See, I know a lot of people who played PUBG. I feel like that had its market, but like
when it's my point is, they're trying to sell this on being here in the moment so you can have, and the implication is so you can have the memories later. Who's reminiscing on these? Yeah. And maybe it's too early to be reminiscing because the live service model might be too young for it. But when you do get people reminiscing on stuff, it's usually like highly curated experiences like World of Warcraft.
Yeah, more the MMO model.
Right.
Which even the MMO model seems like kind of dead. Like, other than the games that are already doing it, how many MMOs launch, get an update or two, and then fall off?
Yeah. I mean, World of Warcraft is the exception to the rule. And it existed, it showed up at the right moment at a time when people were already paying monthly subscriptions on their like their phone bills and like loading minutes onto their phone, where it was an easier sell to make someone pay $10-$20 a month to play a game than it is now. You can't make that argument now. You have to disguise that in the form of cosmetics or microtransactions. You've got to like bury the lead a little bit. You cannot make World of Warcraft today. I mean, do you still need a subscription to play World of Warcraft?
No. So the base game is free. It's free up to a certain level, and then once you hit a certain level, you have to get a subscription. That's for the main game. If you want to play any of the classic servers, you have to have a subscription.
Yeah, so even WoW is burying the lead now because you can't get people to pay that up front anymore. They won't do it because that's a whole other story.
I've never even heard of that. I was actually, just because we mentioned it, I was looking at what the top MMOs were. But they're Baldur's Gate 3, Wuthering Waves, I don't know what that is, Path of Exile 2.
Back up a second. Baldur's Gate 3?
Top play, apparently, as of right now, has the highest player count of all MMOs.
We're calling that an MMO now?
I guess so. Based on server populations. That's what, I'm looking at a list on mmopopulations.com, so...
Am I thinking of the same Baldur's Gate?
Maybe not. But then Path of Exile 2, Honkai Star Rail, which is like a mobile anime girl collector, and then World of Warcraft is 5. And then after that you have RuneScape, Genshin Impact, Dark Age of Camelot, Path of Exile, Asheron's Call. Like, it falls off really quickly too, looking at the player base numbers. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 active players today is 1.51 million. Warcraft is 1.12 million, and then you get down to Asheron's Call, and it's 35,000.
I don't really buy that, like the metric they use for that. Like Baldur's Gate 3, I have not personally played it. I'm like regularly in voice call with people that are playing it in multiplayer, and they're like, I've heard them say like, "Oh, sorry, we already got 4 people."
Yeah,
I don't believe that it's an MMO. I might be missing something, or maybe there's a mod.
I don't know. I never played it, so I was just curious. But like, yeah, it's weird because if it seems like the people who play those games play them already, they already have their game and they're going to stick with it because it's successful. They're not going to play multiple live service games. They're not going to hop. Like, no, like I know personally, everyone I know who I play like Overwatch and stuff with, we all jumped into Marvel Rivals for a while. We dropped into Fragpunk for a while, and then almost everyone went back to Overwatch 2 because that's just what they played. That's what they know.
Right.
That's what they've been gaining skins and stuff for like a decade. Like,
there's no more loyalty to it than this is the most convenient basketball court closest to where everyone lives,
and for us to meet up and hang out.
They don't make us pay to enter or whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's a nobody who's still playing Overwatch, I think. And okay, sorry, not nobody, but I think most people still playing any of the Overwatch games are not doing it because they like Overwatch so much more than like Apex or help me.
I don't even know.
Yeah,
TF2.
TF2. Okay, that's. I was gonna say like maybe Counter Strike 2,
Yeah.
but like nobody's
Paladins, Valorant,
there. Valorant. That's what I was
Apex.
looking
Like
at.
I'm just looking at a list of like
Right.
hero shooters.
Hero shooters.
Fragpunk. Like I think a lot of like, and there's so many that died off. I'm just looking at this list. Like
Because they don't make maps for them; they just make new characters.
like Monday Night Combat. Remember that?
Holy shit! I forgot about Monday Night Combat.
Plants vs Zombies Garden Warfare 2. Like there's a fan community trying to resolve it, but there was a Plants vs Zombies hero shooter.
Oh man.
Lawbreakers, I think that one died off super quick.
Lawbreakers, I thought there was always like a vocal contingent hanging on for a while, but no, I'm thinking of something else. But there were a lot of people like
Battleborn was Gearbox's. Like these games don't really stick around, and so like Marathon really, even at I think best case scenario for releasing in 2025, had a couple years in the tank, and it would have made a lot of money first year. Population would have at least halved, just because usually within the first couple of months there's a ton of hype, everyone hops on the game, at least half the population leaves within the first couple of months. Like even looking at Rivals was huge when it dropped. Its population's dropped a lot. Not saying there's not a ton of people playing it, not saying it's not still successful, but like that's just kind of how these games go. Huge people pop on, but like
up companies like Sony
yeah,
see that as a failure. And it's the reality of it is it's a video game, and a lot of the early numbers you see are people saying, "Hey, this new game came out. Let's go try it." And then moving on to fucking, I don't know, Deep Rock Galactic week later.
And then I think the problem was they wanted, you said $60 for it or 40?
I don't know. I think
we knew there was going to be
40.
an entry fee,
and
I don't
40 would have been too much. Let's be real.
But like
for what they were going to launch with,
even looking at a lot of those games I listed, the ones that failed had an entry fee. The ones that succeed are free, because even now I could ostensibly, I've never played it before. There was an update this week. I could sit down and play TF2 and start playing TF2 right now.
I have not even looked into that yet. I know it happened, but
there's been a couple updates. I would love to do a TF2 like state of episode, because that was my game. I played competitive for a while, but like
I think that would be good. Like one of those things we record on the side for like when like 3 weeks from now, when you get clipped by like a Harley rider or something, and you're in the hospital for a week, whatever happens, it's gonna happen to you. Me, it's just gonna be like annoying stuff.
See, I think it'd be fun to do, and like get some of our like listeners community to like hop in a server and play for a little bit together.
I like that idea. I like the idea of also just throwing in smaller side episodes that are not held to like a regular release schedule,
or just getting weird like Gulf War month we were talking about earlier, where we pick 2 Gulf War games, one from each Gulf War.
I want to do I think at some point we're gonna have to reconcile the 2 game format, but not today.
Well, I think doing a main game every other week just gives people something to play along with us, and then we have something like we've gone way off track. But this was a marathon episode.
All right, let me look at my notes here.
I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about marathon specifically.
I think so. We got a little bit off track talking about, old men yelling at cloud-based gaming.
There's a little bit of that, but also I think it's also news.
We knew we were going to talk about this getting into it. Like,
part of the reason we did marathon was it was in the news again. I know you like marathon, but it also makes it interesting to go talk about again.
Whereas, I love marathon. I love to hate marathon.
Like, yeah. So I don't know if we have anything else.
What is one? I don't know. Closing question. What is one thing you saw in this game that you would like to see more of in modern games?
Honestly, I think the deeper storytelling. Not that there aren't a lot of games that do that, but the games that do that are already so huge. Like you see a lot of that stuff in like Cyberpunk or like the new Baldur's Gate, things like that. Like but those are like RPGs. You know what? They're intentionally deep storytelling games. we don't really get a lot of shooters with like depth to their story. Like, I mean, and you see more of that in horror games too. Like Resident Evil, Alan Wake, things like that will have like a deeper story if you look for it. But we also just don't get a lot of standalone shooter games anymore.
And people's idea of lore is insane.
Yeah.
There's a formula you have to follow, and it is really funny that like new Doom is kind of like trying. I don't think Marathon ever came up in the discussion, but like is trying to do lore dumps now, and it's like the dumbest shit you've ever heard of. The game's fun though.
I think the lore is fun because it is just as stupid as the lore should be for a Doom game. You know what I mean?
That is true. It's very consistently rip and actually I think rip and tear is lore now.
Yeah, like I actually haven't played Dark Ages yet, so I can't say.
You think Imp Encounter is lore now?
Let's hope so. But. Look at that one up at your own...
Don't look that one up.
Look that up at your own discretion.
Don't look it up at all.
But yeah, I some of the new Wolfenstein games I think had some pretty more thought out lore in a good way. I heard that new Indiana Jones is really good. I just haven't been able to allow myself to budget for it because it's like a full price, like $70 game. But
I neither of those games. Well, that's not really fair. Because, Marathon asks you to go centuries into the future and has to fill the gap. So
yeah, none of those games I mentioned are on the same level as Marathon, though. That's what I'm saying I would want to see more of.
I would say maybe, like, I know very little about Warframe. Warframe seems like that kind of game. If you're, like, looking at I just want to see that delivered more in that kind of terminal format. And I don't mean, like, walk up to a node and get a story nugget, but...
Deus Ex does that pretty well. The whole series.
They do. Yeah,
even
Deus
the later
Ex does
ones
a great job with that.
Not everyone likes. I feel like Deus Ex really picked up the. I would say Deus Ex probably picked up the Marathon like storytelling format and ran with it.
The background story delivery format.
Yeah, especially the second one, which I know is kind of not everyone's favorite, but
we're gonna have to cover it here though.
Yeah, we could do a Deus Ex month or two, but like
it's got to be a different topic than that.
The second one I feel like has a really good like all the emails you can dig through that are like completely. I love that game. It was one of the first RPGs I ever played actually, and like. Just like I'm playing this dumb shooter, I'm getting through the sci-fi world, and I started kind of paying attention to the emails, and I'm like, oh, I'm involved in this like corporate war between multiple coffee brands. Like you start actually reading what you're doing, and you're like, okay, this is insane.
Well, and one thing I like that the original Deus Ex did is people just would leave like open books lying around, and you'd read a page, and you'd find it was like either like a real piece of fiction or a real document or something like original written for the game. Like there's a whole like almost a mini novel or like excerpts from a mini novel in Deus Ex, like written in the style of Neuromancer.
Yeah.
Like just for this game. And I don't think you're going to see that ever in AAA games because you would need to hire a professional writer. Or I'm sorry, let me walk that back a second because that's going to sound more disparaging than I mean it. You need to hire a writer that writes books as their job and not writes for games because the demand for game stories is
different.
Yes, it's not necessarily worse.
It's like asking a film director to compose an album. It's a different art form.
Right.
Or it's like telling someone who does musics for video game soundtracks, be like, all right, we want you to put together a pop album for dance clubs. Like there's overlap, but there's different goals and different.
I think the only way you're going to see that is if you get an indie dev who is also writing on their own time.
Or mid-tier studios. I feel like we're getting back to an era of a lot of like small to mid-tier studios that are kind of starting to get back to those waters.
But you can't expect find a novelist, expect him to write a bunch of content for the game and then tell him like, oh, by the way, like a lot of the stuff you're writing is most players are not going to see it.
Yeah.
That's a hard sell. Now, if you're like one of these old fashioned studios where, that's the one last thing I want to end on this is like one of the things I love about these old games is a lot of people doing double duty. I forgot to mention that. Can I read you like some of the main credits here real
Yeah,
quick?
sure. Yeah.
All right. So, first up at the top, yeah, Jason. I think I did mention some of this, but Jason Jones credited as product design, but which I'm assuming means game director. He's also doing programming. Alex Seropian, co-founder of Bungie, he's doing all the music you hear in Marathon. I think we might be playing some of that for you throughout the episode.
Yeah, as long as it's not gonna get us pinged by
I
YouTube, I'm gonna put it
I
in
highly
there.
doubt it, but we'll see. Is also a level designer. Reginald Dujour, or sorry, J. Reginald Dujour does the like comic style artwork we see. He's also a level designer. Um, a fella named Tenderloin is listed in the credits as a multiplayer playtester. Not important. I just felt like Tenderloin was worth mentioning. But you see a lot of people in these older game studios doing double duty. They have their own artistic discipline. Like Greg Kirkpatrick, I think, if I remember right, is going to be the main writer for the subsequent 2 games as well. So a lot of people will talk about the story and bring up Kirkpatrick. So he's more involved in the story. You you look at Half-Life 1's development, and a lot of the people that have different artistic disciplines are getting more into the nitty-gritty of game design. Mark Laidlaw, the writer of Half-Life, is a level designer. Kelly Bailey, the lead musician responsible for the soundtrack of really the first couple Half-Life games, is also a level designer. I mean, people have to have their hands in a couple different pies, and I'd be interested in hearing about indie games that are still made like that. I think there is a surplus of talent right now with everyone getting laid off, and I don't know that if you're starting a small game studio and looking at the hiring pool, I don't think you're going to see a lot of people coming at it from a cross-disciplinary angle anymore. And that's, I think, coming back to that, I think that's the thing I want to see from Marathon most, is people like kind of getting out of their lane a little bit within that development process and bringing what they know from someplace else into a different aspect of game dev.
I think we're starting to see more of that. I posted a video from Alpha Beta Gamer in our chat channel over on Discord,
Yes.
but of games to get excited about 2025, which is like over an hour of nothing but like game trailers. And they're all indie devs. Some of them are independent, single. A lot of them are multi-person dev. But either way, like very interesting. I think that's the direction things are going again. Like I think we're starting to see more and more of these small games just like blow up out of nowhere, like Balatro. Or I'm trying to remember the one I actually was playing it.
Lethal Company was another one.
Lethal Company got huge. There was the one that's basically like Peggle. But Nubby's Number Factory. That's the one. Though it's Peggle, but it's also got like roguelike elements to it. Like I feel like that those games are starting to get bigger and more attention, and like we might not see another like immediate Minecraft, but we are seeing like more indie success. I mean Minecraft in that it was basically developed by one and then a small team and then became like the biggest thing to ever happen in video games at the time.
Why don't we talk about that one guy anymore? I wonder.
We're too close to the candy wall. Let's move on.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got distracted by something you posted in Discord about Larry Bird.
Anyway.
Absolutely mouthwatering.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a note to end on. Let's move on. I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
I think Marathon's cool. I wish we got more games like old Marathon, but
I would just love to see a Marathon like in terms of its story delivery, maybe less of its like hostile level design. A little bit. You got to add it, but as a seasoning.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late today. I was fighting for my life on the bathroom.
That's fair enough.
No, like not taking a shit, just like, fighting off bathroom assassins.
All right. Well, you weren't late for them, so we're gonna go. Have a good one, guys. Hopefully you don't get bathroom assassinated. Hey, this is Hunter. Just popping in real quick. I forgot to mention a couple things at the episode. First of all, our next game. So if you want to play along, our next game is Space Funeral from 2010 by the Catamites. We're doing RPG Maker Month, so that's the game I went with. Game I love, never finished. want to go back into it and play through it. Focus on the next 2 hours. I'd probably get through it in that time if I remember properly, but we'll see. That game's free on itch, so easy. Go download it, come play along. And then also, we've got our Patreon link down below. If you want to support us, check it out. I'm also posting our first goal over on Patreon, which is $10 a month. And that $10 a month is called Breaking Even, and that'll cover all of our hosting goals. So that is our goal for the year. So not a big rush right now, but we hit that $10 a month. Whew, what a fun time. Anyway, either way, come hang out with us in our Discord server. Come play some games. Anyway, that's all I got. I'll talk to you later. Bye.